I'm Mike Bradner, and this is Capital Views, and we have with us today Fred Parady, who is a former Speaker of the House from Wyoming, and he's also our Deputy Commissioner. So Fred, tell us a little bit about the differences between these two states.
Well, thanks for the question, and I'll probably begin with saying I like to say I'm a recovering politician. I'm in about step 7 of a 12-step program, Mr. Speaker. There's many similarities. Wyoming and Alaska are both mineral-based economies with substantial tourism. Of course, Alaska's fisheries and coastline are substantially bigger than Wyoming's landlocked, but the fisheries side of things is limited to a little trout fishing for cutthroats or goldens. The states both have substantial tribal entities operating within the state and as historical forebears to the state, if you will. And then fisheries and game and fish issues come in Alaska with the subsistence side of things that isn't seen in Wyoming, but both are avid hunting and fishing states.
Yeah, a fair share of Wyoming is also under federal domain. I mean, it's...
Yes, 47% of Wyoming is federally owned, and you have Yellowstone National Park, Grand Teton National Park, then you've got substantial forest, Bridger Teton Forest and BLM lands, and the same kind of issues about federal overreach and how you manage resources, mineral extraction, et cetera, from a federal environment. Wyoming has a big checkerboard where the railroad owns every other section of ground, about 4.5 million acres of ground.
And that dates from 100 and some years ago.
Yes, it does.
The railroads were king.
1867 and the Golden Spike.
Now, in Barrow, you were the mayor's chief of staff, and your spouse was deputy superintendent in the school district, and your kids went to school there.
Casey Elizabeth, we have 3 older daughters, but our youngest daughter has been in Barrow since she was 2 weeks old, and somebody said she's a little Barrow blooper, and we said no, she's a little Barrow blessing. But she goes to Pollock Elementary, went to Pollock Elementary. The slope is blessed with resources, so you have K3 and K4 as available in the schools, and she can count in Inupiaq and sing in Inupiaq, and I think her whole life will be informed by her time. She says, hey, Dad, when do I get to go home to Barrow? And she's a tough little cookie. She likes to go outside to 20 below.
Well, that's, you better in Barrow.
Yes.
Now, you filled a number of roles, in the state of Alaska. You worked with the Mining Association for a while. And
yes, I had a dream job, if you will. So I have a minerals background. I actually have a master's in land reclamation. I won a National Reclamation Award as well as a couple National Safety Awards. And coming up to Barrow into both the school district and the borough sort of tapped into my political legislative leadership skill set. Going to the Alaska Miners Association, I followed a legend, Steve Burrell, and it was a great job, but my family was still in Barrow, so I headed back north and went to work for Mayor Brower.
And now you're here, Deputy Commissioner, and...
I followed my wife both places. I went on the record. She took the job in Barrow, and I followed her, and then she took a job in Junior, and I followed her again.
So here you are.
Here I am.
And, well, you bring a skill set and a diverse background that's rather unusual, and you have a department that has such a diversity to it.
These are challenging times, so I have some political learnings. Some of them are pretty pragmatic. You never use power that you don't leave bruises, and when you're dealing with a deficit, which is of course the more difficult of the two, but if you have a surplus, we one time went to session with $1 billion surplus. There were north of $2.5 billion of requests because everybody says, well, you can do this and you've got an extra $1 billion, and so you still have to say no.
That sounds very familiar.
Yes, I bet it does to your experience as well.
And maybe too much money is sometimes not a good thing.
Well, certainly when we had our surplus, the strategy we had was to invest 1/3 of it, save 1/3 of it, and use 1/3 of it for non-recurring and 1/3 of it in state employee salaries and the kinds of things that occur and get pent up over time, maintenance backlogs,
And
et
how long were
cetera.
you in the Wyoming legislature?
I was in the legislature for 10 years, and by tradition in Wyoming, after you're the speaker, you retire, and we also like to say that the Senate's where House members go once they're trained. I probably shouldn't have said that.
The
on
old
the air.
boys in the Senate.
Yes.
And the Wyoming House was how big in the Senate?
60 in the House, 30 in the Senate, and 40-day sessions for the general session, 20 days for the budget session.
Now that's a little different
Yes.
than here.
They say legislating's like closets, it fills the space available.
Now Wyoming, generally, how long would it take you to get to the border of the state? I mean,
It's
in any direction.
358 miles across, so you could do it in a little less than 5 hours. There's the speed limit, and then there's the de facto speed limit. You usually run along about 80, 81, 82, 83 miles an hour.
And you have other big cities, Denver nearby.
Actually, this is just fun, but Wyoming is, of course, a rectangle-shaped state, and it bleeds its corners, southwest to Salt Lake, southeast to Denver, northeast to Rapid City, and north central to Billings.
That's sort of like we bleed to Seattle.
Absolutely.
I mean,
Similar.
everything that's done in Alaska turns dollars over that goes to Seattle.
Yeah, what you want to do is have that money turn more than once before it bounces
Before it
out of
reaches
state.
out of the state. And I mean, you have also a village outreach. I mean, the Department of Commerce, Department of Community and Regional Affairs.
Yes.
I mean, you're probably the most diverse. You have probably the most unified state reach and touch.
DCRA is a joy and a blessing to work with. So we have 6 regional offices, 40 local government specialists, and grant specialists. There's north of 1,900 and north of $2.1 billion in grants. That's accumulated over a 5-year period, and that's likely to tail off here with this session's capital appropriation. But a great opportunity to help shape the infrastructure and needs from powerhouses to water treatment plants to a project we're doing here.
And help them manage those resources.
Once they're developed, you bet.
Yeah. Well, Fred, we're about out of time. It's been a pleasure to have you here. We've been talking to Fred Parady, who Deputy Commissioner of Commerce and a former Speaker of the Wyoming State Legislature. And this is Capital Views. Mike Bradner. Thank you, Fred.
Thanks for having me on the show.